You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those that have made it their home.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma podcast. Mike Hearn here, your host, back with another episode. Excited to share this episode with you today. But before we do, I've got to thank our sponsors. First of all, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. They've been a huge part of this podcast for the last few years. So the Oklahoma Hall of Fame have been sharing Oklahoma's story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com. And for daily updates, go to oklahomahof on Instagram and give them a follow. Our other sponsor today is Chickasaw Nation. Now, the Chickasaw Nation have sponsored pretty much everything in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma, and it's an honor to have their name and their brand supporting this podcast. A huge shout out to Governor Anatoby for supporting this podcast. It really means a lot. Our third sponsor is Diffie Ford Lincoln down in El Reno. Now, this one makes me so happy because these guys are great friends of mine, play a lot of golf together. I've bought my cars from them, do most of my oil changes down there, have a cup of coffee, hang out down in El Reno. It's a good spot to go. And not only are they great friends, but they provide a great service. So for over 60 years, third generation family owned Oklahoma business down in El Reno. They're also in Bethany as well. So people in the Bethany area know the Diffies really well. But if you're looking for anything new, used, Ford, Lincoln, or whatever, I'm sure they could find anything you want. Check them out, diffieford.net, and then on Instagram at diffiefordlincoln. And let's get into today's episode. Really exciting episode for you today, but before we do, we have some housekeeping rules. I don't know if you've seen, but me and Thurman Lynch have committed to, well, we set a goal to raise $10,000 for Children's Heart Foundation, CHF. Link will be in the description. We're currently at $3,000, and yeah, there's a link in the description. I think the goal, if we can raise $100 an episode, maybe we'll easily get there. So, and then I believe cancer research is going to match our $10,000. Everything's in the description. Raise some money. Don't go buy a Starbucks. Put that money towards, kids' cancer. Come on. All right, enough of that. My guest today is Shelley Zumwalt, who is the executive director of the Oklahoma Department of Tourism and Recreation, which I feel like I could probably have that title for my social media. But absolutely, I don't deal with all the stress and travel that you do. I just sit at home and thumb at my phone and record podcasts with awesome people. So thank you so much for coming down. I know you're super busy and really, really appreciate you taking some time to do this before you head out of town for a little bit. So it means a lot. I know you're super busy, that you're thrown in the deep end, and you've, like we've just been talking, you've been traveling all over the state recently. So before we dive into, your backstory, your Oklahoma story, tell us a little bit about kind of, what you've been up to this, we're almost, what are we, first, second week in February. What have you been up to this first 6 weeks of the year?
Yeah. Well, I just took the job at the beginning of October, actually October 12th. Everyone knows those dates, and you're almost like ground yourself with them. So I'm almost exactly at 4 months. And this year has been super busy. Busy is such a relative term now. I think everybody's super busy. It's just like when your busy changes, it kind of jars you for a little bit. So I felt a bit like each moment I have to plan a little bit ahead, just to make sure I'm in the right place at right time and like prepared. But it's been fun because getting to re-engage with a lot of things that are Oklahoma because of my job. I've learned so much and met a lot of really exciting people. You mentioned I'd traveled all over the place. We did open houses, a series of open houses for our RFI, which is a request for information to get new vendors into the restaurants that are at 6 of our state park locations. And that's a lot of words that basically mean I got to travel to a lot of places that I hadn't visited in a long time, and we were in all 4 corners of the state. And I was driving in rural roads at night when it was raining, and testing my ability to stay calm in that situation. But it's the best tired because you're re-engaging with a lot of things that give you that nostalgic feeling, and then meeting people that are really dedicated to Oklahoma in a way that is admirable, but also like energizing. energizes you.
Yeah.
So my first couple of weeks have been exciting and exhausting, but I mentioned earlier, I'm the state director of fun, essentially. So no one wants to hear about, the tired, and it's like you have the best job, and I agree, I really do. I have a really amazing job that lets me promote a state that I've lived in my whole life, and I don't know anyone that wouldn't say, yeah, I'd take that job. That's great.
Yeah, you pretty much get to go to a different town every week, right?
I mean, some weeks are different than others, but yeah, I mean, or multiple, and it's just, it's one of those things where when you get there, you have an idea kind of going into it. And it's always surprising the people you meet or how the town works, or, learning about a festival they had that you didn't even know about. So It's just, you mentioned my title in the tourism recreation department. The department part, I think, is misleading because everyone's super surprised when I say we have over 700 employees, but we also have, over 30 state parks. So there's these little ecosystems that exist in there, and not only is it a challenge to visit all those, but to understand what I can do to help them, what are challenges. It's learning about things you know about, but learning about them in a really fast-paced environment, and it's something that people really care about. So you have to take the time to make sure you're listening in a way that can give you the perspective, to take action.
The other thing that comes to mind is just how many different, probably different foods you've tried by traveling, right? Because every town has this signature burger place, right? Or an onion burger, or, an ice cream shop, or that must be a great perk as well. It's because all the places, we you see these lists, top 10 burgers in Oklahoma, and you're like, 2 of them are maybe within 20 minutes of where I live, right? Mm-hmm. Otherwise, they're all over the state. Yeah. And, other than traveling there for work, you're probably never going to go that route, So that could be, I love food. So
I do too. And actually, I feel like I'm going to fail you with my answer to that. But we've had the open houses at 6:00. So a lot of times, and then I'm engaging in those open houses with people that are these, business owners, either in that town or in the state. And then, I'm permanently hungry in those things, but by the time we leave, nothing, so I've got a list of Italian places and chicken shacks, and, getting to meet all these business owners that are interested in making that successful, whether it's one restaurant or all 6 of them, and hearing their backstory. And it's really one of those things that I feel it's a great thing to do anyway, but getting that piece of it and knowing why they care about it has been the best part of the experience, because you get to really understand people. And food, everyone talks about food, so it's the best topic. Right. And if they obviously love food, they're doing it for a profession. Yeah. But I do have a lot of a greatest hits list that I've got to go through. I'm a big ice cream fan, so secretly, I haven't told anyone this, but you always motivate yourself different ways. And because we're leaving so late, I just told myself I could have ice cream for dinner. So I've had,
totally justified.
Totally. Yeah. And so my staff, when they were driving with me, they're like, "What are we doing?" I was like, "I'm buying you ice cream. That's what we're having." Yeah. And of course I would have allowed them to have other things, but they were like, "This is great. This is a tradition." And I'm like, yeah, it is. If you ride with me, you get to have ice cream for dinner.
Now it's a tradition.
Yeah.
That is awesome. The beauty of it, right, is like you said, you are, you basically travel, you're bringing people, or, trying to bring people to the state. And that's the one thing I think, since I've been here, and I've been here 11 years now, that, there was talk of, before I came here, we're a flyover state, all that stuff. And then the basketball team came, which helps, and all the other things. But now, people see Oklahoma as a place to go for the weekend, and there's so many things to do. I know, everyone talks about Broken Bow, but that's not the only place in Oklahoma that people can go to. Yes, people in Dallas probably go up there, and the cabin prices, if you want to buy one, are ridiculous. It's great for the local community. I'm sure, they're about to become a town or a city or whatever it is. But there's plenty of other places.
Oh my gosh,
and so many places that have great, not just great food, but great attractions, 30 state parks, there's so many. And, I've talked about this many times on the podcast, is the fact that we have so many different ecosystems. I don't like to fish, but fishing here is great.
Amazing.
I play golf. Golf also is epic here. There's so much to do here. So, I can't imagine that. I'm sure there are days, like every other day, like everybody's job, there are days you think, today's a tough day. But the majority of your work probably really puts a smile on your face because every day's different.
100%. Like, that's the piece of it that is super exciting because, like you said, we have 11 different ecosystems. And I think it's interesting. Oklahoma, I haven't quite figured out, like, if there's a phrase or, you know, a word to describe this, but it's interesting because I feel like Oklahoma almost feels, and the people here feel like almost apologetic about the state in some ways. And then because of that, we have all these people coming from either other states or internationally that are, you know, a lot, they are mystified by Route 66 or, you know, some of our state parks or all these different things. The Pioneer Woman, you know, Reba McEntire's new. There's just like I could literally, in the true sense of the word, literally go on for hours about all the great things. But it's almost like our biggest challenge is making people who live in Oklahoma tourists in their own state because there's this perception that I have to go somewhere out of state to really get something cool. And so that's been something that I've been really cognizant of is, you know, Robbers Cave, when I went down there, I hadn't been down there since I was a kid. And like getting to see the restaurant on the water, the cabins, like it's truly breathtakingly beautiful. And it's in Wilburton, Oklahoma that, you know, you have to drive through all these, but like you're truly almost off the grid in a way that I think we live here and you can go 15 minutes and see the stars. But people that don't have that, like that is super unique that you can live in Oklahoma City and drive, which is in a couple of hours, and, you know, be off the grid in a way that's very, very hard in smaller states with, you know, more densely packed cities. And so it's almost like reimagining how you present the state to people. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we're talking about a lot of the things, the comparisons are, you know, pre and post pandemic right now. I think the next 10 years for Oklahoma are going to be so fundamental in how we progress, and the opportunity there is just really limitless because people reevaluated what they value in life. The pandemic was a lot of things, but, you know, what I think it gave people a break to say, how do I want to organize my life? And what are the things that I'm going to bump up on the priority list that I didn't realize I needed? Yeah. And like Oklahoma is perfectly positioned for that. And how do we show people that way they'll travel here and create tourism, but also so they'll, you know, like you say, this is a place that I can call my home because it really does have what I want. Yeah. And it's a huge challenge, but it's a great honor to be the person that gets to say and talk about that for your job, because I tell my staff, you know, we are the people that actually provide the respite for everyone else. Our job, our work is the break for other people from work. Like, you know, we are the people that they look forward to, mm-hmm. you know, and like how neat is that like what we provide is something that they will associate with relaxation and adventure and, you know, everything that people think, this is what I need more of in my life. And I'm the person that gets to talk about that and figure out ways to give them more of that in their life. So I'm never, ever going to complain about my job to people because like, there's challenges, but there's not something that I can say, oh man, that's not cool. Like I get to do something very cool every single day.
Yeah. Did you travel much as a kid?
Yeah. I have family in France, actually. And I have an uncle who's a monk, and we call him, you know where this is going, he's my munkle. And so, and my parents are really big travelers. My grandfather worked for American Airlines. And so my mom, Polish family, very Catholic, and, you know, they had standby passes. And so they traveled all over. So my mom really instilled in us like this value of travel. And so we never drove nice cars when I was a kid. I was the one that was like, drop me off 2 blocks from school because we had this like van that was from 1970 something. And it was very embarrassing, but I got to go to Europe as a very small child, you know, like, because that's where we saved our money to do that. And I saw my mom also like, you know, carting around small children in Europe and feeling like amazingly confident. And like that really instills in you something like, this is for me, because like that's what you want people to, this is for me. I belong to the group of people that can, mm-hmm. you know, navigate this, and it's something that's an option for me and that I see. And so travel is like, that's my favorite thing. I love planning it and figuring out cool places to go. And I feel really lucky because it's not something that is feasible for everyone, but how can I do that where no matter where you live in Oklahoma and no matter your economic situation, there's something that gives you that sense, of escape that's available to you.
Yeah.
And we absolutely have it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've just been as you were talking, I was writing down a bunch of different things that we have in this state that brings people in, brings people in from out of state, but also stuff that we can do here. Obviously, you've got Turner Falls, and if you like the side-by-side kind of ATV thing, that's huge down there.
Yeah.
Talking about side-by-sides and ATVs, you have Little Sahara, which is massive.
Oh my gosh.
Huge draw for that.
Yeah.
And then, we had an Ironman in Tulsa. Mm-hmm. And then the other one I wrote, which I'll be doing. I run once a year, won a race once a year. Other than that, I'm done for a year, and that'll be the Mid-South in Stillwater.
Yeah.
And that's a huge cycling gravel race. People come from all around the world. It's not just, come in to watch the basketball game or come to watch Sooner football or Stillwater or whatever it is. There's so many things, and tech is huge here as well. The list goes on, and I'm not surprised you could talk about it for hours. But I love that you traveled as a kid because that sets, and for me, because I've traveled here and traveled a little bit when I played golf, when people ask me, what should I do when I graduate? I'm like, take a year off, get a plane ticket somewhere and figure it out.
Yeah.
Because you're never going to get that opportunity if you go straight into work. It's not say you never, but and it just broadens your horizons, right?
100. My parents are actually in Israel right now, and they really plan their life. They're both retired around these amazing trips, and so to have that model, I feel very lucky. But you actually, we just met this morning, but you just segued really nicely into what I was in one of my notes, which was adventure tourism. So I would say that thank you for that, and also people don't realize we're a huge destination for that, but there's still a lot of opportunity. I think they think Utah and Colorado, but the amount of opportunity that adventure tourism provides for our state is probably it is in the top 5. I'm just not sure where the ranking is, and and economic impact. And one of my dreams is to do an adventure race through multiple parks. And I'm saying this out loud because therefore I'm going to be held to it.
You're accountable.
Totally. But it's over multiple weekends, and it's a different thing. It's a running, biking, ATVs, rock climbing, because our state is so unique in that you can literally do that and not have to travel hours in between, and it's affordable. And so how do we bring in and really showcase that for our state? Because there's people in state and out of state that would absolutely do that. And it's a huge lift in that you want to do it right, but it's not a huge lift in that the mechanics of it are an obstacle.
Right.
I can think of 3 parks off the top of my head that would be very doable.
Right.
And it's just exciting because I know some of this from living in Oklahoma, but like you said, every day's new. But every day I'm learning about something really amazing in our state that I didn't know about. So it is one of those, no one wants to hear you complain about being the director of fun for the state, but also I don't have, I'm not going to complain about it because it's an exciting thing that I get to say, oh my gosh, we do that, every single day. So
growing up then, when you're traveling with family and you kind of looking back at family history, and you mentioned Polish descent. You have a uncle. Mm-hmm. There, it's real now. I said it.
Thank you for that.
It's been accepted. What's your dream at that point? What do you want to be when you grow up?
So I went to school for broadcast journalism,
okay.
And I was lucky in that I grew up in Norman, and we had a program in high school. It was called the School Channel, and I auditioned to be on it. And so from 9th grade on, I was hosting a show on TV all through high school. And so that was really my dream. Katie Couric was big when I was a kid. And so I don't remember, you know what? I'm going to take it even further back, right? I wanted to be an Olympian luger, which in Oklahoma is a lofty dream. I watched
I mean, of all the sports to be an Olympian at luge is not the top of the list.
Pretty bananas. But I remember watching the Winter Olympics and being I want to do that. And my parents are just that's really we want to support you, but that's really out. Not only is that financially,
no, But the luge is the one where you lay down, right?
Yeah,
skeleton is face down, face forward.
I'm sure, yeah.
Going down a bobsled, and luge is when you're laying on your back going down a bobsled.
Yes.
Just you. You're
just
basically
you
a
at very
missile
high
going
speeds.
down.
People like get
Yeah.
very, as a young girl in Oklahoma, I probably was like trying to really break out of whatever mold there was there. I played soccer when I was younger, loved that, and so I considered myself an athlete. Well, what is the one thing that like no one else is going to be like, yeah, me too? And that was probably, admittedly, not a very realistic goal. So then I moved on to Summer Olympics, and I decided I wanted to be a runner. And my parents got me a stopwatch, and I mapped out a mile and would just run this like block repeatedly and time myself. So I had some pretty I wasn't an Olympic runner, just in case anybody's that cliffhanger, I can like let that one go. But I definitely wanted to like combine some sort of activity, with my accomplishments. That's always been, I've run marathons, like I love having goals like that. But I don't think that I had like a realistic, I want to be this when I grow up, until I got to audition for that TV, part. Then I was like, oh, this is great. And it's challenging. And that rush of adrenaline, like being live, or that's something like public speaking. I think people either like seek it or they run from it, and I definitely was like that's terrifying and I want to do it, not that's terrifying and get it away from me.
So this is an assumption, but growing up then, especially with like the luge thing, and you mentioned something that no one else wanted to do, you kind of had strive to be different. So
I think so, but
to stand out a little bit.
Like, I don't want to pretend like I was, a trailblazer by any means, but I did like have a sense in me that like I wanted to like stand out in a way that I think my peers probably were more trying to like not stand out. But I was definitely like a teenager and very, I was like every other teenager. But I think that as far as like what drove me, that was more of a driver than probably. I had a family friend, her daughter and I were really good friends in high school, and we still are friends. She said, she commented on something that I had posted, and she was like, you are always different growing up. And like, thank you. I don't know what that, I'm sure she meant it positively, but it was that like, you always kind of did your own beat, I was who, I don't look at it now and think that was like intentional per se. Like I thought that thought. It was more that gave me that was a good motivation, and I felt good doing that stuff. So I think it was, without analyzing myself too much, you could say that, but I wasn't, I wasn't breaking the mold in like ways that I think people look back and be like, yeah, she, I'd picked her out in the crowd or something like that.
But there may be a connection with the travel thing though, because when you travel, you broaden your horizons, you see the world, you see what's available, you see what's out there. And then when you come back to Oklahoma, because you've seen people in Paris or all around the world doing things, that is now normal to you, even though it's not normal to people here.
It's interesting.
So you might have stood out to everyone here, but not mentally in your head, because especially as a young teenager, we're all self-conscious.
Yeah.
But then there might have been that thing there that said, you know what, I'm not super self-conscious because, all my friends are off doing this. I want to go do this because I've seen people do it, and in my head, that's normal, right? That's
interesting. And I've never even thought about it like that. But I think, especially with the luge thing, right? I mean, that didn't seem like an impossible thing for like, a kid in Oklahoma. I remember thinking like, we just have to like do these things. And I've always been really, and even today, like I love the adrenaline rush of being like, this, I tell my staff all the time, like there are no barriers, like we have to, I should say also, there's laws, there's all these things, but like as far as like dreaming and vision, like let's do something no one's done before, because that like being able to like be, change the way our agency is perceived, or, what is ours, what we can do. I mean, that to me is like the best adrenaline rush ever. Getting to do these open houses, and I don't know, there's been probably RFIs and people have probably done things like that, but the team, you could tell, just really like, we're like, yes, we're going to do this. And I'm just so lucky that I've got a team of amazing people that are like, and I'm like, but what about this? And they're like, yeah. So they definitely pull me back sometimes and like, have you thought about this? And I appreciate it. But for the most part, like, we get to do really neat things, and they're always up for an adventure or a cool idea. Yeah.
I think it's better to be that way and come up with a million ideas, and then, you pick 10 that are epic rather than
Oh, absolutely.
Struggle to get to 10 ideas, and half of them aren't great.
I say very often, I'm like, this is either a really good idea or it's the worst idea, and I'm not sure yet, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah. You mentioned, kind of being pretty athletic growing up. Did you grow up with brothers?
Yeah, I have this surprises no one when I say this, but I'm the oldest. There's a video of me when my brother, it's his birthday, and I think he's turning 5 or 6, where you can see me and hear me saying he's unwrapping his birthday presents wrong. Yeah, so I was as advertised, but I have a younger brother who's 2 years younger, and my sister Shannon, who's 7 years younger, and they're both actually finishing up school. She's getting her doctorate and he's getting his master's. And the competitive part of me is like, I need to go back to school.
I need another letter.
Right? Like I can't let them win. But they're both amazing. And Matt and I being so close in age, there was a lot of physicality, in the, I think brothers have that, but him and I adore him now, and but we really did fight, and there was very many athletic things that happened, and he was my best friend and also my tormentor growing up.
It's a great sibling to have.
It is.
For all the right and wrong reasons.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. So you mentioned the broadcast thing. That was kind of I'm focused on this. I'm doing, I'm putting myself in front of a camera. I'm doing live TV at a young age. Does that just think, this is the path for me? I'm going to, chase this into college and then be on the news and maybe do a Winter Olympics or Summer Olympics and get into the sports world?
I will luge and conduct an interview at the same time. I think I played soccer in college at St. Gregory's. We had that brief discussion beforehand, and we played in the same conference when you played golf. And I think going to school to do that and also study communications, I took a little bit of a detour there because there wasn't a broadcasting program at the school that I originally went to. I transferred to UCO and then did that there. Yeah. Probably a long and boring story, internships, all of that stuff, but it was an interesting time to be graduating with that degree because I think the news in general was changing. It was I wanted to change the world, right? I wanted to do hard-hitting stories, investigative journalism, and basically make the world better through that career. And I think at that point, just because of the economics of, a reporter doing a story that was going to take multiple days and lots of interviews and wasn't going to be ready for weeks at a time, it was changing. And I want to be really careful about what I say because I think, that's an important medium, but it was really turning into more of an entertainment, focus in that it's quick hits and it was weird for me because I had to have that realization that what I wanted to do, it didn't really exist. Either I had to change what I wanted to do or, not do it. And it was tough, but it's interesting how the world works because I think being a public servant, I get to do that in just a different way. And people are always surprised when they're like, you're really good at an interview, or, I saw you on TV, great job. And I'm like, well, I did go to college for that. So thank you. But also, it's a skill set that I think has been really helpful as people that are in public service, especially, in a leadership role, are expected to be spokespersons for that, especially in this role. Absolutely. And so it's one of those, I'm really glad that ended, that happened the way it did, even though at the time I was you have all these ideals and it just wasn't, it's probably not going to be what I wanted it to be.
Yeah. I think, when you're in college, and especially if you're a college athlete, there's a lot of college athletes who do communication as a degree, right? Mm-hmm. And they kind of get laughed at. Yeah. And you're and I definitely laughed at friends of mine who were like, yeah, I'm doing a communication degree. It was super easy. I didn't do anything. It was all online. I just played golf. I'm like, well, okay, good for you. But looking back, I think I wish I would have done a communications degree, right? Because it doesn't matter what you are. It doesn't matter if you're a plumber or if you sell real estate or if you're on TV. We've all got to communicate. And the better you are at communicating, it's going to make you better at your job.
Yeah. What was your degree in?
Marketing.
Well, there's not a ton of...
Yeah. It's okay. But I took marketing because it was less accounting classes.
That's fair.
You're right. It's not the degree that I think it's perceived as, right? It's much better than that. Mm-hmm. for longevity.
Yeah.
Right?
The flip side of that is like, everyone, it's like when you write something, everyone in general that, can like write and they think it's super easy and there's not a strategy to it, and so you get someone who's like, well, yeah, I mean, I can communicate, whatever, but it's like, no, actually there's a strategy and, there's a lot that goes into it. But I do think you hit on something. I think the thing that I've been really lucky, I've had a lot of jobs in state government. I started out as a budget analyst and then was in communications too. And I got to touch on so many different areas. I worked at OMES, which is the Central Services Agency that do a ton of stuff, but I know a lot about it because I had to write and be a spokesperson and like all of that. So, it's like knowing a little bit about everything, especially when you're in a huge ecosystem like state government, you really are, you almost become, it's your secret power, is because you can know the people or the things that really are that linchpin of like either starting something or completing it, because you have to have, that knowledge or at least know where to go to get that information.
So when you do graduate, then do you take a job where you've been previously interning at, or does it, like, how does that first job come about? So I'm trying to decide right now what's going through my head is, do I give you like the easy answer on that one, or do I talk? So I took the LSAT, and like, So that was, I was dating someone at the time, and we had decided we were going to get married, and he was in law school. So I decided that would be my path. It ended up not being my path. He also beat me by 1 point on the LSAT, which I still remember. And I took it twice just to try to beat him, and I didn't. Still a sore subject. But so I thought I was going to go to law school, and I didn't do that. But yeah, I mean, I took a job, and it just wasn't what I wanted it to be. It was one of those things. I'm not going to say, I think that like, saying where it was is probably irrelevant, but yeah, I did. And it just wasn't the experience I wanted it to be. And I did, I worked in nonprofit for a while. I worked in communications, did a lot of different stuff, but it wasn't until I had my job as a budget analyst. That was my first job in state government, where I got to analyze policy and really kind of work in that finance piece that really intrigued me, because that was really what I wanted to report on. Was I really wanted to be a finance reporter and like really talk about those hard things, because I think also there's certain, especially at that time, there's certain industries that like women weren't super prevalent in. I think that like you could say that potentially about tech, especially then, but like finance was one of those where there weren't a lot of voices that were, it's that kind of that thing of like finding a niche where you can be different. I think that's part of it too. But that's what I wanted to do. And there wasn't a lot of female voices in that space. And so that when I became a budget analyst and got to kind of combine both of those, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And it really instilled into me this fiscal responsibility. Mm-hmm. I feel so lucky that that was my first job. I had great bosses that were really like, we are servants of the taxpayer dollars. And that is something that is like fundamental to what I push down to my staff, but also it drives my decisions, because I think that if you have that as your baseline, you're always going to make decisions that aren't really so narrow that you're not thinking about the perspectives that may not be immediately obvious. Right. Yeah. There's nothing better than finding what you want to do, finding your place, right? Finding I enjoy coming to work every day because I feel like I'm making a difference, and it's also stimulating my brain. Yeah. Not just punching in and punching out every day, just like, why am I here kind of thing, right?
100. Yeah. I think I remember my mom told me this recently, and I have no recollection of it, but it sounds very much like, my mom's amazing, but she also will say stuff in a way that you're like, I think that meant to be a compliment, but it was a little rough. But she was like, well, yeah, you weren't going to be an early bloomer or something like that, and I knew you would figure out what you wanted to do, but it wasn't going to happen when it happened for other people, And I'm just like, let's stop talking right now. But so I was in my early 30s when I got that position, and it was it didn't pay awesome. It was an entry level position, but like it was one of those things where I knew I would. I wanted to get more of that. Like I'm involved in how this big system works, and like what I'm doing is changing or helping my state.
Yeah.
And I think it's also my Achilles heel, because when people say, "What are you going to do after this?" and I'm like, I don't know. I don't. And I wonder, like, is that the thing that really I have to have some element of that? And then, like, I'm never gonna own like a giant house that I have rooms I don't go to every day, because public service isn't. I'm well compensated. I don't have any complaints, but like you're never going to retire early, or do something like that. And so my entrepreneurial dreams, I don't know if like I'll get into it and I'll be like, no, it's not. Like. I need that thing, that service aspect of it. That's what really is, drives me. And so, a couple of years from now, I'll probably have a crisis of conscience and be like, what am I going to do? But I've been really lucky to identify that and be able to generate like the satisfaction you need, but also like see change that I've impacted, especially for the place that I love.
Right.
Like getting to serve during the pandemic was like, that was like the honor of a lifetime, because there were so many people that needed help. And I say this often when people ask like why, that was when I took the job, I'm jumping around here, but when I took the job in unemployment and workforce, it was May of 2020 when the pandemic had just happened. And like, there was so much desperation just on so many little levels, but with people, because, everything had been shut down. I think that if public service is the thing that drives you, if like making sure that you're making an impact, I don't see how I could have said no. It was a chance of a lifetime to help so many people in ways that were like tangible. And so it wasn't ever that I thought, I was just like, can I be the best person to do it? That was really the question for me, not would I do it? Of course I would do it. Because there's literally 4 million people that are going through something they've never gone before. And so many of them have had their lives just ripped out from underneath them. And I can make an impact on that. Like I can help fix that.
Yeah. And I know we chatted before this, that came at a, like, obviously you're a mother as well, right? And the timing of that was during the pandemic. You have a daughter, thankfully, your daughter's dancing and she's off at a dance school, right?
Yeah.
So, I know we want to talk about this, because I think it's worth talking about is, you were able to dedicate yourself fully to your job, thankfully, because your daughter is out of state at a dance school, right?
Yeah.
If your daughter's in state, or your son or whoever, it doesn't matter who it is.
Yeah.
Like you're not, you fortunate enough to, selfishly dive into all work. And I'm sure you did work probably 12-hour days during the pandemic, because everybody in state service did. Yeah,
right? That's so interesting about the pandemic, is because like there was people that everything stopped, and then there's people that it was like all of a sudden there's not ever going to be enough time, Right. And I thrive in those environments. I know not everybody does, but I am not very good at the like scheduling the doctor's appointment stuff. But you give me a fire or a crisis, and I'm like, yeah, we're living now, like let's do this. But yeah, it's interesting, because I've had this conversation with many different people, and it's like, because Lily, my daughter, went to boarding school in August of 2020, everything was, like I dedicated myself 110% leading up to that, but also she wasn't needing to go to dance or, all these things that are obligations. Like, and my world changed in that, like I literally did not have to be home when she, because she's at school in Michigan. Like I didn't have to be, I could work till midnight. And I do tell my staff, like I can work 24 hours a day if Lily's not here. Now, my husband is probably going to be like, hey, I'm here too, but he's very understanding. But like my ability to do that job at OESC and get to work at like, 5 a.m. and leave later, that absolutely is not possible if I was having to fulfill that role of, she's going to school, and then this is how she's getting, and then I'm going to take her to dance, or I'm going to pick her up, or I'm going to, the coordination of that is something that would not have been possible. And I don't think that had that situation with her getting accepted into boarding school and deciding to go there, and like I would have been able to do the job the way I did. You're always disappointing someone in those situations. I think all parents feel like this, but it was interesting because I always had like, it always felt like there was this tug of war, and all of a sudden that was gone. And I was like, oh, wait, this is what it feels like to be like completely and maybe like scarily dedicated to your job, because there's no one saying you have to come get me, or, you know, whatever that is.
Yeah.
So I don't think I fully like figured out all the answers to that question, but I do think that when I'm, you know, especially like new moms, when we're talking, like you want to acknowledge that is impossible. Like, it's impossible. I miss the heck out of my kid. She loves it, right? But like, that is a sacrifice that I have so that I can do. I got home at 11 o'clock last night from Northeast Oklahoma. Like, you can't do that when you have a, you know, family at home. Yeah. And I don't have, this experiment is still ongoing. She's a junior in high school. So, but I know she loves it. It's a good thing, but it has offered me this opportunity to be dedicated in a way that, you know, the first 13 years of her life, I was, you know, trying to juggle all of those things.
Does she share your passion for competitiveness?
It's so weird having kids, because like there's certain things that you're like, I really hope you get this quality, and then there's other things where you're like, I'm so sorry about that. I mean, she was a competitive dancer for a long time, so she is competitive, but she's like a better version of me, like 100%. Like, I am don't touch the stove, it's hot, and I'm like, let me see, you know, and she is cautious in a way that's like so much more like adaptable to a circumstance. Like, she's not as competitive as I am, in that, like, I think the part of me that with maturity, I realized that's not like, we don't have to get mad about board games, you know, or throw our pen or whatever. It's an embarrassing story. But like, she has that ability to turn it on and off in a way that like I do now. But when I was younger, I would realize that like, oh, this isn't, normal people don't do this. Like, you know, Monopoly is not a blood sport, right? So
not everyone cares as much as I do.
I mean, yeah. And then you're like, why don't you care? This is a game. You know, we haven't. It is one of those things that I think she got the best portion of that, in that like she is competitive, but she's also not she's not at the expense of other things, which is that makes her a much better friend and just person in general.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That was a really long answer to that.
No, I mean, it's like we don't have kids, but it's funny, like, we have 2 dogs, and the way that I like sometimes yell at the dog because she doesn't stop barking at the front door is the same way that my dad yelled at our dog back home. Right. And I catch myself and I'm like, you yell exactly the same way as your dad does. Mm-hmm. And I'd only realized that about 1-2 years ago. Those
are some like real moments where the reflection. My mom is, I say she's 5 feet of fury. Like, she's 5 feet tall, and like every inch of that can like tear you down in 2 seconds. And but I think like she's also very straightforward, and like there's a lot of qualities that I have that I think when I was younger, I thought this is the most embarrassing thing in the world. And I'm sure my daughter, like, it's all the same thing over and over again, you know, the same things that I do that my daughter's like, you're terrible and you're ruining my life. You know, is the exact same thing I thought. And you think you're so unique, and like the world is, you know, but it's the same thing. And I know that the reasons why I'm successful, a lot of the qualities that I have that I think have allowed me to do the great things I've been able to do, like, are because she was this example that really was like not one that I saw all the time from, you know, other women in her generation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm sure, like, you know, coming from Polish descent, like there's some of that just hardened, you know, like part of you that's like deeply rooted in your family.
Deeply rooted in like a history that is, like just, our family name is Torzinski. Okay. And if you ever see a ski, my staff would laugh about this because I tell them Polish tidbits all the time. SKI, that, you know, generally that's Polish, and it means son of. And but my grandfather, his name's Louis Marian, or was Louis Marian Torzinski, but his name is Torchy. Like, no one knows him as Lou or Louis, it's Torchy. So like that is her dad. Like, so it's this very there's a million stories I could tell you about that side of the family, but all my staff knows that we're Polish, and like if there's ever an opportunity to like celebrate Poland, the first people that completed the Route 66 passport, Poland.
Polish.
It was a couple from Poland. And I was like, yeah. I mean, those are my people. No one does that. That's just me. Yeah.
That's back to the monopoly situation.
Right. Exactly. I'm like,
really cares.
Poland won, but no one else is as advocate as, you know, as big an advocate as I am. I think probably about Poland, but there's not a ton of us in Oklahoma, so it's interesting. And then just admitting the history, there is a tough grittiness that goes very far back. My grandfather was born on the south side of Chicago, and like he has a crazy story too. So I think that perseverance is like, if you look at the thread, that's very common. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. My go-to with the, you know, Wales being a tiny country as well in Europe is that there were more people of Welsh descent who signed the Declaration of Independence than any other country in other than the States.
That's amazing.
Right. And then when people tell people that, they're like, no way. And I'm like, Wikipedia says so.
Yeah, no, I mean,
figure it out.
So that's something I would, if I was you, I would repeat every podcast just so you're like, I'm not sure if you know.
I'm not sure if you know.
But this is a tidbit about Wales that I think I'm going to drop today. And then, no, that would totally be my go-to. I support that. I will say that for you and in the next coming weeks.
Yeah. So obviously, like, you know, you mentioned at the start of the podcast, you started October 12th, you know, in the new role as director of fun, basically.
Yes, yeah.
How does that come about? How do you get a phone call months in advance? Is it like a day off? Like, how does that happen? Because a lot of people they just see a headline and they see, you know, Shelley's been elected or chosen or however it goes. How does that happen actually? Yeah,
that's a great question. I think I'm going to talk about the mystery behind the appointment, but I don't think it's going to be, something. Unfortunately, this story is probably pretty generic, and it happens every single day. As I told the governor whenever I was approached about taking the job in unemployment during the pandemic, I said, I'm committed to 2 years because I knew all the challenges they had, especially technology challenges. Like that was a minimum to be able to do that. And as I hit that 2-year mark, I kind of started thinking I had assembled this amazing staff of people there, especially like the leadership, and it became less necessary, I think, for me to be that person. You know, like these it's a group of executives that know what they're doing. We've calmed down. There's still challenges, but it wasn't the like sprint to the finish line that it had been for a while. And you know, I had been talking to different people in administration about what do you want to do next, and tourism came up. I don't say this about myself often, but it's been repeated that like I'm a fixer, and you know, everything that had happened to tourism prior to that, it was an agency that very much needed someone to come in and be able to do a lot quickly.
Yeah, we'd had some situations.
Yeah, exactly. And so and I knew that there wasn't a lot of stability there. And so those, just started having those conversations. It was over multiple months, and I didn't know a ton I knew about tourism, but I was even surprised that it was like over 700 people worked there and all that it encompassed. But it has always been one of those agencies in the back of my mind that was like, I've never worked at a cool agency.
Right.
There's a hierarchy everywhere, right? Yeah. And like the Central Service Agency, while they have a lot of power, was not super cool. And then unemployment and workforce, not necessarily not cool, and definitely became a linchpin for success while I was there. But like being able to do the things I do now, like I was like, man, like that seems like a really a fascinating job, but I knew it would be a lot of work because of everything that had happened. And so we just kept discussing it, and I think the thing that helped for the decision for me was I knew I had a strong leadership team there, that if I left, it wasn't going to be this vacuum. And so now I'm over here and I'm building a new leadership team. And it actually, I think, people that are much wiser than me realize this, I'm sure, a lot sooner, but the ability to build great teams and then be able to lead, like, I realized doing that was something that I was good at, and like getting people together. And of course I've made decisions that were not good ones, and everybody does, but people that work together and can really like cohesively run something, and there's not that backstabbing environment that can kind of be toxic. That's what we're doing here, and really putting some foundational things down. And I really enjoy that. I enjoy helping people to, navigate that world where, they think they're the only person that's advocating for them. And I'm like, no. I want to make you successful. If you get your dream job after this, or if this is your dream job, then like that makes me successful as well.
Where do you kind of pull your just success in leadership from? Like, obviously it's a long, it's taken a while it's not something that's very easy to be successful at, right? There's many blueprints out there. This is what you should do to be a successful leader, but actually doing it when you have, 10 people, 100 or, 700 people now, like, are the principles the same? And what have you kind of like evolved over time, like as a leader? Because people probably don't ask you that enough. They just see, hey, I travel, I speak. Yeah. But you're actually like leading a team. You have a leadership team, and then you have all these employees. So obviously, back to the fixer quote, you're very good at what you do, and there's a reason for that.
Thank you.
Do you know what that specifically is? Is there something you focus on like with every single one, or is everyone different?
Yeah, those are very good questions. I think it really all started with my brother when he was unwrapping the presents wrong. Like, the ability to identify, things that need to be corrected. No, I'm kidding. First of all, I want to say, like, I question myself constantly, like, not in a way that I think is like putting myself down, but just like, making sure I'm navigating it. And I was actually having this conversation yesterday. I said, like, as a leader, you don't have the luxury of thinking, how does this impact me? You can never think like that, right? You have to constantly be evaluating, like, is this going to set a good example for the team? And I told this person, I said, I am every single day making myself be a better version of myself. There's an easy way to do anything. You cannot return a text. You can not take that extra moment to make sure, the team understands or is headed in the right direction, or, not giving that attaboy. But like, everyone cannot do that. Yeah. Like, but you have to constantly be holding yourself to a standard that's just a little bit higher, and you're not going to meet it every single time. That's the other thing, is like, there are times I really wish I would have handled situations differently. And I could have been a more positive impact on someone that's, on my team. But I think reflecting on that is probably something that, like, with maturity, I realized that a mistake isn't something that, is a mark necessarily. It's an opportunity to really get better. And I just try not to take the easy way out on those situations. Have the hard conversations. Make sure that if someone can benefit from you not taking the easy way out, and they're on your team, like, take that extra moment to try to be that better version of yourself and give that direction, and like, make sure that they are taking what they need from it. Like, you're setting them on a positive path. But I think I really get a lot of satisfaction out of seeing others succeed. Like, team members of mine, when they're just like, if they go on to do something else, or if they feel like their engagement with our team is like something that really drives their satisfaction, that really, how can we get more of that? But I also think it's like holding yourself super accountable, that like, even if there's not a direct correlation to what you're doing, let's say, I'm trying to think of a good example, but if, you can be doing everything fiscally responsible, but if on the outside, that's not something that's reflected to your team by your actions or whatever, there could be no direct correlation there. But if they see you as someone who does one thing and says another, then it's less impactful. Like, you really do have to, if you say this is important to me, you have to analyze your actions from that like point of view. And that's been something that I think as I've gotten, as I've like led bigger teams, that's something that I've really tried to focus on, is you can argue anything to death. You know, I can say, well, that's not what I meant, or actually that doesn't relate or whatever.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really matter if at the end of the day, the person that's like doing the hard work at one of our parks says, I don't think she cares about the dollar the same way I do, then I haven't been a good leader, right? Like I really do have to walk the walk and talk the talk and be conscious of like what that impression is. That's a super long answer, but I just think like there's always going to be a book, and there's things that I get out of all of them. And there's a lot of times I'm like, man, maybe I should adopt this style or something, you know, but at the end of the day, I think the thing that has allowed me to really, you know, hopefully be a positive impact on the teams I'm leading is that honesty that like, I am going to fall short. You are going to fall short. We're all going to we're going to run fast. And if you trip, I will pick you up and we'll keep going, you know? And, but if there's correction, like I will be direct and I'll tell you and say, this is not working. This is what we need to do. And then we're done with it. And like you go be successful. And those are hard things for a lot of people, I think. Like, you know, confrontation, no one loves it. No one loves being like, you didn't match up today or you didn't meet the expectations. But that's the thing I see in leadership that's often like the thing that could have been done better, and people avoid it so much. It's like someone from point A to point B has no idea how they got there because, you know, a leader didn't want to say, hey, that wasn't good enough, or I think you need to do this differently. And it's, you know, it's the hard way versus the easy way, I think.
Yeah. Well, and also I think when you go into it and you say, all right, I got 2 years, like, you know that like, it's not just, I can do this for the rest of my life. I've got 5, 10, 20 years in this. You know, when you've got such a confined time to turn things around or improve things or whatever you want to call it, 2 years is not a lot of time.
It's not, man.
Right?
No.
So you've got, especially when you think of like budgets and employment and all the other things that go into it, like 2 years is nothing, right?
No, not especially like, and as I said earlier, I've made mistakes. Like there's definitely things where I was like, man, I just burned a month of time or 6 weeks or whatever because I should have, you know, or that person wasn't right for that position or whatever. You know, there's a myriad of things. And so, yeah, it is, I mean, that is the engine that's in the back of my mind too, is like, we've got a lot to do and not very much time. But also I like, what's the word I'm looking for? I like new experiences too. And so I think that like giving myself that time period to do those things, it's also about like, I mean, I enjoy this while you have it, you know, like there's a permanence that I don't think I've allowed myself, you know, to enjoy. And so it's that experience and making the most out of it. That's like, that drives me too.
Yeah. And forgive me for not knowing enough about like the hierarchy and all of that.
No.
That department.
I think it's endearing
works.
that you don't.
But so, you know, like you mentioned earlier, I don't know what I'm going to do after this. Just in the realm of possibilities, where like what is next on the ladder, right? What is like the next step? Like just if you just look at the chart, like is there just a bunch of people who are executive directors of like what you came for to where you are now? Is it like a lateral move, or is it hey, if I want to do something else, I've got to go to this. I've got to go be an you know, take on Matt. And we know Matt, obviously. We'll know who Matt is. I don't want to say who it is.
Yes. Lieutenant Governor, I'm not coming for you, I promise.
I'm coming for him. I want to play golf with him.
Yeah, he's a good golfer.
Yeah. But yes, you know, obviously, and he will be on the podcast soon, I believe. But like, what's next? I mean, you know, obviously your daughter could be, 2 years, you're going into college? Right?
Yeah, and, man, you know, like, that's a
not
whole...
to throw that in the mix as well, but,
man,
you know.
Yeah, that is where I am always failing, is that whole thing of, like, parents that have kids that are going, like, that whole, like, going to college and the visits and everything like that. I feel completely inadequate in that situation. I'm hanging on by a thread. But that aside, I mean, it's a lot of different options, but I think also... the model of like a director, I don't know, there's probably someone that went from like running an agency to running another agency. That probably exists somewhere. I don't think but recently, I don't think that that's something that a lot of people have done. And so it's kind of a unique situation to be in. I think I could probably go run a different agency, but I don't know that that's something that, I don't know, right now, there would have to be a unique circumstance, I think, that would compel me to do that. I think that there is the option of right now Matt Pinnell is our cabinet secretary. That's like the next step, like of someone running an agency and being a cabinet secretary. But I don't know that like
Sure.
he does a great job at that. There's no reason why that would necessarily change. A lot of people run for office, in those situations. I don't think that that's probably something that's in my future. I've thought it was before, and we talked briefly about this. Circumstances change you, and you sometimes those ideas take on a different form when like the experiences around them give you a different perspective. But I always have had an entrepreneurial streak, when I could say it correctly. And I think probably that's something that really interests me. But then I also, the realist in me is like, do you really want to do that? Like, your daughter's going to go to college and you can do whatever you want to. And like, you're really going to start your own business and dedicate, hundreds of hours to that. Is that a smart move? But that's really the only thing that's stuck in my brain from, this whole time, that I'm like, man, that would be really cool, because the same passion that I talk about, like Oklahoma and my team and the things, like I would love to share that with something that I have built from the ground up,
Right. Yeah.
That would be, I love that when people are business owners and they're just like, they want to do the best they can and make an impact in the thing that they do. They're super proud of that. That to me is like that same energy of being able to promote Oklahoma. But I don't know what that would, I don't know what form that would take.
Yeah.
I could run for office and probably do that. But we talked about this briefly. Like the pandemic was crazy for a lot of reasons, but I think the attention that I had gotten really like mushroomed, and it impacted my family a lot. My daughter and my son, and my daughter, I don't have a son, but my daughter and my husband. He, and it was tough to see my career negatively impacting them. And I don't know that I would do that intentionally right now, because an election is really hard. And I think if you're running for office and you don't have that perspective beforehand, you could probably deal with it, but knowing that like that would be something I would have to accept to run for office, and to really like take, knowingly put them in that position again. I don't know that I would do that now. Yeah. It's interesting. I'm sure that's something I'll look back on this interview and say, wow, I can't believe I thought that. And then, this happened. But I believe in public service in a way that I won't ever completely rule it out. Like, I think that I would love to continue to serve my state in whatever capacity. But I think that running for office is something that I don't think that it has the, I don't think that people sometimes appreciate it for like the sacrifice it is. Sure. And I know that there's going to be a lot of people who disagree with me on that, but if you have the right people running and trying to do the right thing, and there are a lot of them, I promise, that the things that you give up to do that are significant. Sure. And it's not someone that's a lot of times it's not someone that's an egomaniac. It's sometimes it's a single issue that galvanizes them, or they just really want to be someone that's an advocate for their district or their state or whatever it is. And unfortunately, like it's a weird time to be doing that right now, I think. Yeah. And there are people that have run and like not done great things, and that's disappointing to see. So, politics aside, I think public service is an amazing thing. And the people that sacrifice their family time and all of that to run for office, it's super admirable. Mm-hmm. And I think that I believe in that, but I don't know where my intersection of that happens in the future. Yeah,
and there's seasons for everything, right? We might look on this in 10 years and you might like, now is my time. I think I'm going to do it. And things change. And, that's the beauty of opinions too, right? Like minds can be changed and opinions changed based on different experiences. Yeah. And back to the public service thing, there is something special about it, even if you're a policeman or a firefighter or you're a nurse or whatever it is. Like, there's just something special about helping people. Yeah. Which is what it comes down to, right?
Absolutely.
Well, finishing up, I want to talk about some fun things.
Yes, let's do that.
In your bio, it says you like running and reading.
I do.
I'm reading right now.
Yes. What am I reading right now? So, the book I'm reading right now, I have a weird genre. I like a lot of historical. I'll even do historical fiction at times. But I'm reading a biography about this young woman who grew up in Minnesota, and she had a really rough childhood, mom with mental illness, all of these things. And I was reading about the description of this book, and it says she went to boarding school. And I was like, oh, interesting. And she went to boarding school, and then she went to Harvard. And so I'm intrigued. And then I read more, and I find out she actually went to the boarding school that my daughter went to. So I'm like, I got to read this.
Right.
And much to my daughter's chagrin, this was... I started telling her about it. I was like, Harvard, that's amazing. Like alumni,
Look at what's possible.
Yeah, no pressure at all. Yeah. And so I've been reading that. It's been interesting to see because that whole, the thread of perseverance is very strong with her too. And she did a lot of extraordinary things to get there. And the fact that there's that small... that experience for my daughter has been transformational, and I have no doubt she's going to be a successful, independent person wherever she goes to college. But she also just seeing that perspective from someone else who's not a student, because she has a whole life. As a parent, when your kid has a whole life, especially that young, where you don't see it every day, getting to read that book was a small way to, and still reading it, to kind of connect with my daughter. And then also my anxiety about the whole college acceptance thing, reading about someone else's trials and tribulations, it's been a little comforting, because it's not like when I went to college at all.
Well, it's funny. A guy I know, his daughter is probably 14, 15, same age, and he's kind of been, keeping her away, not keeping her away from social media, but just keeping an eye on her, right?
Yeah,
social media can be a dark place, right? And until... they were talking about, he was talking to someone who was on a panel at a sorority or whatever, one of those things. And the lady was like, no, she needs a social media presence, because if she doesn't, that's a huge factor in getting into the right sorority and getting into university. And he was like, okay, mind blown. I guess she needs a social media now and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like, yes, I can't imagine raising, a teenager right now about to go to college.
Yeah. The whole competitive dance world, where my daughter is doing ballet and different types of, but not competitive dance now. But when she was in that, the whole machine behind sponsorships and stuff like that, I was like, man, this is insane. But with her and I, we were talking about what she's going to do this summer, and she has some schools she wants to go to, and I'm like, this is the summer of the SAT tutor, because her scores are good, but they can always be better. And she was like, this is going to be the worst summer ever. And I'm like, it's one summer.
It's one summer.
And you won't regret it, I promise. But it's like every other parent in the world. Your kid is like, you're insane, no one does this. And I'm like, actually, I'm reading a book
about this.
Yeah. And
that person went to Harvard. That's what we're aiming for.
So there's a test study that I'm currently researching, and this is what you have to do. Now, I try, Lily says, she said this when she was younger, that I wasn't a tiger mom, I was an eagle mom, which is the next level from tiger. Mm-hmm. And so being that type of parent and letting your kid go so far away, 1,000 miles away, there's some interesting ways I've tried to channel that, I can help you do anything, just let me, and she's like, I'm good, I can do this myself. Right. It's actually been the best thing, because I'm worried that had that not have happened, I probably would have been probably she wouldn't have developed all the independent skills that she's got now, know, and it takes a lot for me to say that, because I think that, I try very hard to give her whatever opportunity she can have, but she's got it, she'll be good. But I do read a ton. I love it so much. One of my favorite things is when it's raining outside and I have a book I can't wait to read. Yeah. And I'm actually getting very excited about traveling later today, because I will be out of cell phone range, right, on a plane, and I have a book that I'm gonna. It's no one can text me, no one, I can really focus on it, and I'll put in AirPods so no one will. I can't.
Right. Yeah. No, I don't want another free bag of pretzels.
I'm reading
Please
about
leave me
how to
alone.
make my daughter wildly successful.
And how to be a Harvard mum.
Exactly. It's very important.
Yeah. To the running thing, are you still timing your miles around the neighborhood, or have we like progressed into kind of, you mentioned marathons and stuff?
Yeah,
the distance route now.
So I am an aging athlete who's had 5 knee surgeries. Up until I know it's like your dreams. You're the only one that really cares about it, so we don't even need to talk about that. I'm not going to relive my dream last night, nor do we have to relive my surgeries. But I don't run as much as I'd like to now because I can't. I don't have any. Yeah. Apparently, that noise that your knee makes when you run, that's bones hitting. But I do still do it. And like this time of year when like you kind of get like a hint of spring, and it's like every once in a while it's like over 50 degrees and the wind isn't insane. Like that type of energy just really excites me. Like a day where it's great running, but you didn't think you were going to get it. Like there's no way you could keep me inside for that day, because I am going to, whether the bone noise is good or bad, I'm going to be like, yes, we've got to take advantage of that. So normally I'm a 5 miler now, but I have done marathons and stuff. And like, I check that off the box. I tried one about 5 years ago, and I trained, and my marathon days are done.
Yeah, it wasn't worth it. But I've done one. I did last year's one. I have that medal. I don't need to do another one.
Yeah. Like I don't need the sticker on my car. I think I'm good.
Yeah.
No offense to anyone who has those stickers. Like, good job, you did it. But yeah.
There's always somebody that pulls up next to you with an Iron Man sticker, right? He's just like, okay, now they're going to do that.
There's
now.
not. Yeah.
Yeah. There's always something more. My wife's training for the full right now, so I am in full support mode.
That's awesome.
She got up this morning at she was running at the lake this morning at like stupid o'clock with her group of friends. I'm like,
that's amazing.
I'll be here when you come back. Just make sure the roads aren't bad.
Yeah. So I got a Peloton in my basement, which is
game changer.
It's my favorite colt. No, I'm kidding. It's not a colt. It's not.
Who is your go-to?
I'm going to be so basic. Cody. I love him so much. Like, he's just the best. Like, I totally on board with it. How'd you know?
My wife.
He's amazing. And if I want to feel really like I'm powerful, I'll do Camilla.
Okay.
Because Camila Ramon, I can't say it very well, but like even the way she says her name, you're just like, yeah. I'm
in my pain cave. I'm about to dominate the spike.
Absolutely. But I've got to like come with a lot of caffeine in my veins to be like really ready for her, because she's intense, but I love her so much.
Yeah.
But Cody's my go-to. Like I know nothing about pop music, but I leave my sessions like being completely aware of everything that's going on.
Texting your daughter, you're like, hey, do you know this song? Like,
and his dance moves are amazing. Like, it's just, he's a great human. I feel like I don't ever want to meet him, because if he's not great, then I don't want to know about it.
We didn't meet him, but we bumped into him at the airport coming home from the UK, going through US Customs.
Oh my gosh.
In the zigzag line, and my wife was like, I think that's Cody Rigsby. And I was like, who? And she pulled up on Instagram. I was like, yeah, that's the guy. And he was in like highlighter yellow like outfit. And he's a tall guy too. Like, he's a big guy. So he was there. And
he's actually 6'3". On my ride this morning, he said that. So yeah.
Yeah. And he's not like skinny 6'3". He's a unit, right? Yeah. So yeah, and like I think he didn't overhear us, but like he knew we knew, right? And as we were zigzagging, we never got close to him. And my wife was like losing. She hates traveling, especially when you come home. It's a 10.5 hour flight. Then you're in customs and all. It's not fun. No. And then it was like the highlight of her day. And we still joke about it now. But yeah, she when she generally rides, if she doesn't run, she'll jump on the bike. And I always ask, like, how's your ride today? And she's like, yeah, Cody pop ride. I'm like, shocker.
It's amazing. So. Yeah, he's enthusiastic, and I love it. And I've never walked away from a ride with him like sad about the world. So he's my favorite. But it has been great. Like they did their whole like you can pay month to month like and rent it, and like I was like, okay, I can get on board with this. Yeah. But I don't do like the live rides, or I can't get into like the hashtags and stuff. Like I'm not trying to be like. I've got enough things going on. I don't need another group that I'm going to disappoint at this point. I'm never going to be dedicated as the other person probably in that world. So we're just going to go ahead and we're going to self-select out of that.
That sounds great. Well, I want to thank you again for coming in. It's been an absolute pleasure. Get to know you, and safe travels. Hopefully it's not super cold where you're going to see your daughter, but I think it is actually.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It'll be. Yep.
But yeah, thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it. Great stories. And for people listening, we will see you next episode. And yes, the link to CHF, our goal, $10,000, is in the description. So go donate whatever you want to spend on Starbucks and donate it to the kids. See you next episode. Cheers.
Hope you guys enjoyed that great episode. Thank you so much for listening. As always, huge shout out to our sponsors, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, sharing Oklahoma story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at oklahomahof. Our other sponsor, the Chickasaw Nation, amazing sponsor. They do amazing things for the state, and they're always sponsoring something in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma, and without their support, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And our third sponsor is Diffie Ford Lincoln down in El Reno. Now, this one makes me so happy because these guys are great friends of mine, play a lot of golf together. I've bought my cars from them, do most of my oil changes down there, have a cup of coffee, hang out down in El Reno. It's a good spot to go. And not only are they great friends, but they provide a great service. So for over 60 years, third generation family owned Oklahoma business down in El Reno. They're also in Bethany as well. So people in the Bethany area know the Diffies really well. But if you're looking for anything new, used, Ford, Lincoln, or whatever, I'm sure they could find anything you want. Check them out, diffieford.net, and then on Instagram at diffiefordlincoln. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This Is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.